Hello. Hi. Good morning.
Bonjour, mes amis. Welcome, everyone, to the First Unitarian Congregation of Ottawa. Whether you are here in Worship Hall or watching from wherever you may be, know that you are welcome. I'm the Reverend Eric Meters. I don't even know my name this morning. I had this much coffee instead of that much. I'm at a loss. What can I say? I'm this congregation's lead minister, and I'm thrilled to be with all of you on this first official Sunday in spring. We had spring yesterday. I hope you enjoyed it. This morning, we're joined by our worship associate, Kate, our interim music director, Kirk. Mariella is once again helping out with music, and I'm also thrilled to introduce my partner in worship this morning, Lori Foster McLeod. Our young children are back with us this morning, though they do need to leave early for their messy church downstairs. I have promised that we will get them on their way by 10:45. We'll see if I'll be able to keep that promise. So without further ado, let us sing together once more. Please rise as you are willing and able and join in singing "Come Sing a Song with Me," number 346 in our gray hymnal.
What a lovely way to start with that cheery song. Good morning, everyone. Once again, welcome to the First Unitarian Congregation of Ottawa. My name is Kate, and I'm delighted to be your worship associate this morning. Whether you are taking part in this worship celebration from your home or wherever else you may be, whenever you may log on, you are welcome here. We acknowledge that our FirstU campus is located on traditional, unsurrendered, and unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe territory, and that the work of reconciliation is a responsibility of our congregation and of all Canadians. Our goal is to educate ourselves and to all those that have willingness to understand, to be of service to those who are at risk, and to advocate for justice. Do take care and take advantage of online opportunities at FirstU to stay in touch during this protracted pandemic. If you are new to FirstU and like to learn more about us, please contact us through our email, which is welcome@firstunitarianottawa.ca. And if you're right here in Worship Hall with us this morning and you'd like more information about FirstU, Mary is available at the back of the pews at the welcome table. And now here's Phil from our board to highlight our announcements for today. Phil, thanks.
Good morning. There are two announcements. The first, please remember there is a special congregational meeting on Zoom at 7 p.m. tomorrow evening, March 27th. The main item will be a vote on the Master Concept Plan for Campus Development. It is important to remember that it is the building locations that we are considering. Everything else, locations of bike and walking paths, orchards, playgrounds, all that stuff will be decided in a couple of years. All those details are not part of tomorrow's vote. If you don't feel you know enough to partake in the vote, there'll be a few board members back at the welcoming table to tell you where you can find the information on the website. One more thing. Pre-registration is required. You can find the link to pre-register in Friday's EUU. You should arrive at 6:30 to be checked in, especially if you need some help on how to vote using the Zoom system. There will be instructions. And here's a special hint. If you pre-register, you will get a screen with the link, and you might wonder how to save it. Be patient. In about a minute, you will get an email repeating that same link. That's what you keep and use. I speak from experience. Well, that was a long one. Second announcement. From the Renewal Task Force, people have been clamoring to know about these fabulous red stickers. The red sticker says, I filled out the renewal survey. You know how you can get one. For those who have already filled out the survey, they're available at the back table. Pick up one of them before coffee. If you don't know how to fill out the survey, there'll be a demonstration at tomorrow night's special congregational meeting. Now, for project leaders, Mary's waving her hand at me. I'm sorry? The stickers are, I put them on the table. There they are. There they are. Thank you. For project leaders, we need you to post job ads. We want to create a new culture so that the big red button on the website is the place to go to connect willing workers with available jobs. Please help. And two suggestions for leaders. If you want to attract new and younger people, don't schedule your meetings during weekday working hours. And have you considered that your project could be a good place to train new people? If you constantly turn to people you already know, we end up with the same overworked folks trying to do everything. Thank you. We encourage you to sign up to receive the EUU, our weekly email newsletter. Check our Facebook and Instagram pages and our webpage for notices and updates. Our calendar continues to be as full as ever, though as global health challenges continue, many of our activities still take place online. Whatever your heritage, whatever your faith, whomever you love, whether you're hungry or not, and however you identify, today you are part of our spiritual community. Welcome.
Thank you, Phil. To begin our morning's reflection on caring, we led our chalice this morning to these words of welcome from Kathleen Mateague. And if anyone would like to help light the chalice in just a minute, you are welcome to. We come together this morning to remind one another to rest for a moment in the forming edge of our lives, to resist the headlong tumble into the next moment until we claim for ourselves awareness and gratitude, taking the time to look into one another's faces and see their communion, the reflection of our own eyes. This house of laughter and silence, memory and hope is hallowed by our presence together. Let us light the chalice.
It wasn't a trick question, right? You can actually do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Evan.
You may have to use your tippy toes.
Or your mama.
Or your mama. The minister's making a mess.
Blow.
Thank you. Our chalice is lit. Come, let us worship together. And what better way to start worship than with the telling of a little story? Whoops! And this is a story called Oscar's Starry Night. And it begins with Oscar is a bear who is often overexcited, like someone else I know. Let's see if I can read upside down this morning. He whooped and whizzed down his slide. He shrieked when he took his mom by surprise. And if ever he tried anything new or adventurous, Oscar couldn't wait to begin. One morning, Oscar woke up feeling more excited than he had ever felt before. That afternoon, he was going to play with Ollie, and that night, he was going to sleep at Ollie's house. You remember that ancient thing called sleepovers? When it was time to leave, Oscar ran on ahead. "Look, Ollie's coming to meet me," he cried, and he waved goodbye to his mom. All afternoon, the two bears raced and chased each other. Oscar kept shouting across the mountainside, "I'm going to sleep at Ollie's house." And when Ollie told him they were going to sleep outside that night, Oscar was even more excited. After supper, the two bears made up their beds. "It's going to be a fine, warm night," said Ollie's mom, "and I'll be just inside if you need me." Oscar snuggled down eagerly. This was the moment he had been waiting for. "Isn't it wonderful out here?" asked Ollie. But by now, night was falling. Everything looked different in the dark. And Oscar had to hold his own microphone. And he began to feel anxious. Woo! Woo! An owl flew by and made him jump. Strange shadows in the gloom made him shiver. And then, worst of all, Oscar felt something soft and fluttery on his face. Can those of you in front see that? "What's that?" he squeaked in panic. "It's only me trying to find your tickle spot," giggled Ollie. By now, Oscar was feeling silly as well as nervous. What if Ollie doesn't want to be my friend anymore? He wondered miserably. "Isn't it wonderful out here?" asked Ollie for the 10th time. Oscar was too upset to answer. But suddenly, Ollie bounced across from his bed and onto Oscar's. "And the most wonderful thing of all," Ollie cried, "is that you're here, because otherwise I'd be scared." Oscar sat up in amazement. "I was a bit scared myself at first," he admitted, "But I'm all right now." Just at that moment, Ollie's mom bustled outside. "Now, who's ready for a drink?" she said after all that talking. Oscar and Ollie both wanted a drink. Then they wanted to see the waterfall by moonlight. Not such a bad thing, a waterfall at moonlight, eh? I don't know if I've ever seen one. At last, the two bears settled down. "See how many stars you can count," said Ollie's mom, "before you fall asleep." "Ooh," cried Oscar and Ollie as they turned on their box and gazed upwards. They cried again as the shooting star dived across the sky. "Isn't it wonderful out here?" asked Ollie when his mom went back inside. This time, Oscar nodded happily. "It's all wonderful," he said, "and one day soon, I'd like to sleep at your house again." And the two bears fell fast asleep together. Thank you for the story. And now Mariella and Lori are going to help us sing the children down for their activities downstairs.
Okay, come on, guys.
It's a pleasure to know you, a pleasure to see you smile, comfort to know we'll share the road a while. Pleasure is fleeting, comforts are far between. It's a pleasure to know you and the comforts you bring. It's a pleasure to know you, a pleasure to see you smile, comfort to know we'll share the road a while. Pleasure is fleeting, comfort is far between. It's a pleasure to know you and the comfort you bring.
Thank you both. Each week we pause at this time in our time together on Sunday morning in recognition of both the joys and sorrows in our lives and in the world at large. We honor our celebrations and challenges by placing a stone in a bowl of water, watching as the ripples extend to the edges of the bowl. It is easy to imagine them continuing out through this space, past the pews, past the walls of glass and concrete, out into the world at large. Now, for the last several months, I've promised you at least one joy every Sunday, because sometimes it feels like the sorrows are so much more. Often members of this congregation's, this community's environmental action group will send me good news from the fight on climate justice. This week they didn't, but I found something of my own. A stone to share that in places as disparate from the state of Montana in the U.S. to the nation of Sweden, Youth are moving forward with legal challenges to governments who are not doing enough to protect the environment. And courts are saying, yes, we will field these cases. That's good news. And also this last week, elders, people my age and older, gathered across the globe to blockade banks in protest of irresponsible fossil fuel funding. Now, those are political, I know. If you'd like non-political joys, send them in each week. You know how to reach me. A stone also in sympathy and care for the family of Helen Samuels, a former member who died a little over a week ago now. Cards for Helen's family. A card for Helen's family is at the back of the room at our caring table, signing a caring card for even people you may not have met or know is a sign of recognition and support and thanks for all those who have done so much to make this community as truly vital as it is. A final stone this morning for all the joys and sorrows that remain in the silent sanctuary of our hearts. Normally, we would move now directly into a time of stillness and meditation. For this morning, I have asked Kate to come forward with a meditation for broken hearts. Kate?
Meditation for Broken Hearts by Thomas Rhodes. Let us enter into a time of meditation, contemplation, and prayer. Feel the earth beneath your feet as it supports you. Feel the love of this community as it surrounds and enfolds you. Feel your breath as it flows in and out of your body. Listen to your heartbeat. Listen to your heart. And how is it with your heart? Does your heart feel whole, shielded by intellect, cocooned by reason, closed to feeling? Or is it broken, fragile to the touch, brimming with the pain of loss? Or has your heart been broken and healed so many times that it now lies open to the world, knowing that true growth comes not without pain, that tears may wear down barriers, and that we may carry the hearts of others even when our own is too heavy for us to bear. None of us has an unblemished heart, not one, for such perfection can be found only in death. And we who are alive still have much to heal. So let us give thanks for the broken places in our hearts and in our lives, for it is only through such brokenness that we may truly touch one another, and only through touching one another that the world may be healed. Let us then give thanks for the brokenness that we share.
Hello. Instead of a regular reading this morning, we thought we'd take a moment to go back in time a bit. What I have for you now is a reflection written by Elizabeth Stevens at the start of the lockdown due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We want to take this moment to focus on what we've lived through, what we've lost, and what we've learned in the past 3 years. The following words may match your experience and perceptions, or they may not. Focus on what the time has been for you. These are strange times. There are so many things that feel unfamiliar. We're still figuring out how to protect ourselves and one another. We are still figuring out social distancing. We're still figuring out phone trees and virtual community. We are still figuring out how to weave a safety net secure enough so no one slips through. Some of us may not know how to manage these strange new technologies. Some of us may not know where we can find toilet paper. Some of us may not know where our next meal or our rent is coming from. None of us know if we will get sick or how sick we will get. None of us know who we will lose. But we know that things are important, what those are. We know how to manage our anxiety. We know that we are resilient as individuals and collectively. We know how to come back to our best selves again and again. We know how to breathe. We know how to be kind. We know how to be generous. We know that we can count on one another. We know that when all of us offer what feels right, what feels good, we always, always wind up with everything we need. We know that this epidemic won't last forever. We know that the world is a beautiful place and that we are meant to rejoice and be glad in every day that we are given. Above all, we know that we are held in a love whose tensile strength is limitless. It will stretch, it will give, but it will not let us go. May we trust in that love in these strange times and in all times.
I can't hear that song without remembering back to the day my father, and this was probably means I was in high school or my first year or two of undergraduate, said, "You know, I've heard so much about that song by John Lennon, imagine, I need to listen to it." And once he had, he said, "What's the big deal?" My dad didn't get everything. Caring is making time to listen, saying yes, something we never seem to have enough of, a common reflex among mammals of all kinds, offering a smile, lifeblood of a worthy life, an unasked for favor, all around us if we but look for it, a breath of fresh air, decorating for a special occasion, reason for hope, and sometimes easier said than done. During coffee hour here 2 weeks ago, one of our members mentioned that the weekend marked the 3rd anniversary of our COVID-19 lockdowns, another milestone moment in human history and our lives. We spoke briefly about that decision and what those days were like for us. I may have mentioned taking a short business trip the weekend prior to the start of those lockdowns. Departing on Friday morning, things at the airport felt close to normal, but the tenor was completely different 2 days later on Sunday afternoon. While only a few people there in the terminals were wearing masks, there was an unmistakable sense of anxiety in the air. People spoke quietly, if at all, to one another, and those of us without masks looked at those with them with both envy and suspicion. Soon we were wiping off food from the grocery store with disinfectant wipes and talking about bubbles in a whole new way and learning what it meant to Zoom. I remember a man in line at the store saying to me that his brother worked at the U.S. State Department and that COVID was a hoax, his brother had told him. "Well, something's making people sick and killing some," I replied. Precocious always. Another day I heard 2 young women talking in a parking lot. "Why bother masking and social distancing?" one said to the other. "We're all going to get it anyway." The things we say before the experience of losing someone we love. Congregations, including this one, went both old school as they revitalized phone trees. At the same time, they jumped headfirst into 21st century AV technology, something we're still in the midst of among many, if not the majority, of our sibling congregations. With that in mind, the members of our Caring Network exec have been wanting to set aside a Sunday devoted to caring. And the fill in the blank question, caring is? And while today isn't on that anniversary of that first lockdown exactly, I hope it's close enough for us to use the last few pandemic years as a lens through which to explore the ways, means, and reasons for caring in our lives. At the close of our talk, we'll invite our greeters, our ushers, to come forward and pass out in little bowls pencils and small, colorful pieces of paper, just like this one, with the words "caring is" on top, and then space for whatever answer speaks to you in the moment. Those taking part this morning online will be invited to text your responses to Lori, my partner in crime this morning. Oh, I'm sorry, partner in caring. Lori's cell number will be on the screen behind me, closer to that end time, and we'll remove it when this recording of our service is archived on YouTube. Lori will, hopefully with a little help from at least one of you, write down what comes in through those texts and fill in even more of these little cards that we invite you to walk after the close of our service into Fellowship Hall, where Lori has created a beautiful board for us to post these on. We'll be able to look at what we come up with together, a mosaic of caring, if you will. Each of us has our own stories of times when we've longed to feel cared for, and hopefully times when we have been. Each of us has memories of times we've extended a helping hand and times when, for whatever reason, we just didn't have it in us. Now, maybe this little story won't have the same resonance here in Canada's capital as it did back in the States in places far from Washington, D.C., but I'll risk sharing it with you all the same. Several years ago, a colleague told of doing a memorial service for the mother of one of his best friends, someone he had been close to for years. He had known the woman, enjoyed her cooking and her company, learned a lot from her. She was a model of stick-to-itiveness, energeticness, and going and staying the distance. After the end of the service, the first person in the receiving line to offer his appreciation for the work my colleague had done was someone my colleague had read about in newspapers often and seen on the TV news, seen interviewed and giving speeches. It was Donald Rumsfeld, the former two-time U.S. Secretary of Defense. And here he was in the flesh, extending a hand in greeting and appreciation. Rumsfeld was the government official who early in the Second War in Iraq infamously said, "You go to war with the army you have, not the army you want or wish to have at a later time." And when service people were being killed by improvised explosive devices willy-nilly in vehicles that did not have the plating required to save their lives, his words were true enough on their own, but as tone-deaf as anything any official has ever said. As my colleague reflected, Donald Rumsfeld was someone he expected would have horns secretly growing out of his forehead. Now, my colleague, my dear friend, Mark, is someone prone to exaggeration, but he had found it fairly easy to demonize someone he only knew through the television and the newspapers. And here was Don Rumsfeld holding hands with his wife, extending a hand in appreciation in the receiving line for a memorial service for Rumsfeld's long-term friend. My colleague had heard actually quite a lot about the woman's friends, Joyce and Don, about all the casseroles they had brought over in the previous months as the woman declined, and all the meals and golf afternoons they had enjoyed over the years. He had never imagined the Don of Don and Joyce was one of the architects of a war that made no sense to him other than for oil and vengeance. And so my colleague extended his own hand and took the one offered him to someone who, a moment before, represented the gross misuse of power, and who he realized in that moment was also capable of long-lasting care and deep concern. We are complex creatures, aren't we? Caring is both simple and part and parcel of the complexities of life. I also have for you this morning the excerpts from one person's thoughts on helping out, recorded in Ram Dass and Paul Gorman's book, How Can I Help? And while this is of solo reading length, even after significant editing down, I think it captures many facets of how we care, while keeping in mind that we don't always constantly or consistently do so. I hope it will provide a hopeful framework about the role of caring in our lives. The author begins, "Sometimes I help, and sometimes I don't. I hold the door open behind me, or I rush through, preoccupied in thought. I'll do anything to help my family, but how much is enough? When to stretch a little further? Whose needs come first? Those close to me get an immediate hearing. The suffering of people more remote gets sporadic attention. If I stop to think about it, I help out for all kinds of reasons. Maybe it's because I feel I should. It's a matter of responsibility. But there's usually a maze of other motives as well, a need for self-esteem, approval, the desire to feel useful, to pay back some debt. I expect my government to relieve suffering. Sometimes it does. But it also pays farmers not to produce wheat, while everywhere, somewhere I should say, somewhere every 45 seconds, a small child starves to death. And a public official, no better or worse a person than I am, finds reasons to justify that policy, even though they would probably do everything they could faced with a starving child. There are times when service is effortless, other days, burnout. Sometimes the chance to care for another human feels like such a grace. But later on, I'll hear myself thinking, hey, what about me? Over Gandhi's tomb are inscribed words that say, think of the poorest person you have ever seen and ask if your next act will be of any use to them. That'll flash through my mind as I prepare to throw a frisbee. And when I spend my cash going to a movie to stave off boredom, I might recall that a $15 operation could restore someone's sight in a third world nation. Our author continues, I'm moved by the power of Gandhi's invitation, live simply so that others might simply live. But I'm not at all clear about how to heed that day in and day out here in the affluent West. I'm fortunate, he continues, for the moment, to have good health and loving friends, to be housed and fed, with work to do and some time to play. When I myself need help, there's usually someone to call. I'm able to spend some time away from places where suffering is readily visible and just can't be screened out. Yet there are few days when I'm not feeling human pain, my own or someone else's. If it's not there in front of me, I see a steady stream of images of misery on the evening news of a suffering planet. He concludes, how can I keep my heart open and not go under? I'd like to do more for others. What do I have to offer? And what would help most? Complicated business, all this. Look, you do the best you can. As you can likely tell, that was written years before the COVID pandemic. It was first published in 1985 and does not mention the disease that would later become, I don't think it was then, HIV/AIDS. Still, the human condition is the human condition. Details change, but the range of our experience remains. The climate crisis may be an exception to this rule, but we have lived with and died from plagues for millennia. Now, as we mentioned earlier, we've asked Kirk to play for us a little longer than normal after my remarks as our ushers come forward. That's a hint. Ushers, please come forward to pass out these colorful pieces of paper and pencils if you don't have a pen with you. Each of you, whether you are here or whether you are watching online, is invited to take a moment to think about what caring is to you. What did these pandemic years teach you? What are you still learning? For those here in Worship Hall, please write your responses, and after the worship service concludes, bring them to you to post them together in Fellowship Hall before you get your coffee or other beverage. If you're not in Worship Hall right now and would like to, please text your responses to Lori. And now let's do that sign. Yes, thank you. 613-715-4855, and we'll add them to the notes that are being collected this morning. I can't wait to see what sort of mosaic we create together. Now, to close, I mentioned our congregation's Caring Network exec earlier. That sounds rather official, doesn't it? Well, if a handful of us are the Caring Network exec, who is the rest of the Caring Network? I'm looking at them. They are you. Yes, you, both here and online, are this community's Caring Network. Now, in response to that, one could say, no pressure. You could also say, who better? May it be so. Thank you. Let's see what sort of art of caring we can create. Kirk?
This congregation has a long history of care, vitality, and bringing people together to move the arc of justice forward. We've been able to live into our hopes and dreams because of the generosity of those within and beyond this community. Whether you are here in Worship Hall or anywhere else, you are part of this community. To make a gift in support of the work of this congregation, you don't need to use the baskets that are now beginning to make their way among our pews. Wherever you are invited to go to our website or contact our finance manager to find out how to make a donation or keep up with your pledge. Our gifts are freely given and gratefully received. We dedicate these gifts to the work of this community of faith, serving human wholeness, caring for the planet, upholding religious freedom, welcoming the stranger, loving one another. And now please rise as you are willing and able to, as we join in singing Circle of Song. The lyrics will be displayed on the screen behind me, and they are also in the program, but they'll be on the screen.
Before we bring to a close this time of worship and reflection, a reminder that coffee hour will resume in Fellowship Hall immediately after the service. Bring your cards with you, please. For those at home or wherever they may be, online Fellowship Hour will begin at noon. You can find the Zoom link on our website or in Friday's EUU. Also, leafy greens, courtesy of the good folks of Ajoski, are available for those who would like some in the grow towers in the old volunteer room near Fellowship Hall. As we prepare to extinguish our chalice, which is barely holding on, let these words, inspired by those of Barbara Hamilton Hallways, lead us forward. Deeply regard each and every person you encounter. Truly listen to what they have to say. Speak what you must speak. Be ready to disarm your own heart. Rejoice in what is possible. Uncross your arms, lean towards your neighbor. Love is everywhere if we help make it so. Smoke? This morning's chalice is extinguished. The spark of our connections and faith remain. Kirk and any singers, meaning all of you, would you please bless us again? As we prepare now to leave this space, may our hearts remain open and our minds remain clear. We are people of both reason and heart, of both memory and hope. May we also always remain people of love, providing a place in this world for our spirits, a place for us and others that can only be called home. Now, as we return to the challenge of helping the world come alive in love, go in peace, my friends. Go in peace.